Alright, hey class. So what I want to do is just kind of work through the problems on your Unit 3 test. And so just start with number 1. Here we were asked to solve the equation. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to find the LCD. So the LCD here would just be 2y. So now once we find the LCD, remember we want to multiply each term by the LCD. So 2y and 2y. Well, over here my 2y's cancel. And so I'm just left with 2 times 2y plus 3. And then on the right side, the 2's cancel, and so we're just left with 3 times y, which is just 3y. Alright, so next we want to distribute our 2 through on the left side, so that gives me 4y plus 6 is equal to 3y. Now if I subtract my 4y from each side, we're left with, come over here to the right, we're left with 6 equals negative y. And now divide by negative 1 to get my y positive. We get negative 6 is equal to positive y. And so that's your answer for number 1. Alright, number 2. It's kind of the same thing. We want to solve the equation. So first thing we got to do is we got to make sure each denominator is in factored form. So this first one becomes 2 times x plus 1. And then the second one's 4 times x plus 1. And then the last one is just x plus 1. And so our LCD would just be 4 times x plus 1. Okay, so that's my LCD. And so that's what we're going to multiply each term by. And so I'm just going to rewrite it first. So 4 times x plus 1 times x over 2 times x plus 1. Alright, so that's our first one. And that's equal to our LCD times the second term of negative 2x over 4 times x plus 1. And then last plus 2x minus 3 over x plus 1. Again, times the LCD of 4 times x plus 1. Alright, so that's just multiplying everything through by the LCD. And now so what happens is this cancels off here and just leaves me with 2. So we're left with 2 times x, which is 2x. And then we get, so that's equals, and then all of this cancels, and so we're just left with negative 2x. And then over here the x plus 1's cancel, and so we're left with plus 4 times 2x minus 3. Alright, so that's what we get when we multiply through by the LCD. And now we just want to solve this. So we got 2x equals negative 2x plus 8x minus 12. And then simplifying that a little more, we got 2x is equal to 6x minus 12. Now we're going to subtract our 6x from each side, and we're left with negative 4x is equal to negative 12. Divide each side by negative 4, and we got x equals 3 for my answer. And if you go back and you check it, you'll see that it does work, and so x equals 3 is my answer for number 2. Alright, number 3, again, the same thing, so I got to make sure each denominator is factored first, so this just becomes x times x minus 7. And so that's actually our LCD, is just x times x minus 7. Alright, so again, I'm just going to rewrite that, multiplying each term by the LCD. So x times x minus 7 times the first term, plus the second term, times x minus 7. And then that's equal to this last term, times x minus 7. Okay, and so what happens is here the x minus 7's cancel, we're just left with 7x. Here the x's cancel, so I'm left with 4 times x minus 7. And on the right side, all of it cancels, and we're just left with a negative 28. Okay, and so now here's my equation I want to solve now. So this is 7x plus 4x minus 28 equals negative 28. Combining like terms, we get 11x. Adding 28 over to both sides, we get 11x equals 0. Divide by 11, and we get x equals 0. Okay, but remember, with these solving rational equations, we got to go back and make sure we plug it in. And if we see here, if I plug in 0 here for this x, well, that's going to give me 0 on the bottom of the fraction. And remember, you can't have 0 on the bottom of a fraction, and so x actually can't equal 0. So therefore, we actually have no solution for number 3. Alright, number 4, we're just asked to factor this. We see we have 4 terms, so I'll factor by grouping. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to group the first 2, group the second 2. Now, if I look at the first 2, it looks like they have a 2a squared in common. So if I factor out a 2a squared, I'm left with a 5a and minus a 3b. The right side, it looks like they have a 5b squared in common. So I'll take out 5b squared. I'm left with 5a minus a 3b. So now we notice that in parentheses we have the same factor. So that becomes one of my factors in my final answer, 5a minus 3b. And then my other one comes from what we have left over, the 2a squared plus the 5b squared. And there's my answer in factored form. Alright, number 5, trinomial. So it's kind of a version of Chuck Norris, but we really don't even have to go that far with it because we don't have that coefficient in front of the x squared term. So we know we got our 2 binomials, and we're just looking for, we know this is x and this is x, and we're looking for 2 numbers that will multiply to give me that negative 30, but then add to give me that negative 1. And if you think about your factors of 30, you will see that negative 6 and a positive 5 would do the trick. And so that's the factored form for number 5. Alright, number 6 here. We have 2 terms, and we really only looked at one thing with one method with 2 terms, and that was difference of squares. And so what we're trying to do here is I want to write this up as something squared minus something squared. And if I think about it, what can I put inside the parentheses to when I square it will give me 49x squared, and that would be 7x. And over here, what can I put inside parentheses when I square it gives me 36, and that would be 6. And so that's it, written in difference of squares form, and so now I remember that just factors into 7x plus 6 times 7x minus 6. And there's our factored form for number 6. Alright, number 7, we're asked to factor. Well, if we look at number 7, the first thing I notice is they have a GCF, and so I want to take that 5 out first. So factoring the 5 out leaves me with 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. Okay, and so now if we look at what's inside the parentheses, hey, that might factor even further, and so we want to try our Chuck Norris method. So we're going to do 2 times negative 4, so it gives me negative 8. And now I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 8, but then add to give me this negative 7 here in the middle, and that's negative 8 and positive 1. So now remember, Chuck Norris says, hey, you want to make your fraction, so that's 2 over the negative 8, which reduces to 1 over the negative 4. And then that's 2 over 1, which is already in reduced form. So then my 2 factors become x minus 4 and 2x plus 1. But please don't forget the 5 that we originally factored out, so we got to bring it down. And so here we have our final answer in factored form. Alright, for number 8. We have another difference of squares type problem. So again, I'm trying to write it up as something squared minus something squared. And so 7y squared gives me the 49y to the 4th. And so then over here, well, we know that's 2. 2 squared gives me 4. And so now we can just factor it. So we have 7y squared plus 2. And we have 7y squared minus 2. And there's our final answer for factor form for number 8. Alright, number 9 now. Again, 3 terms, so I know I'm some type of Chuck Norris method, and so I want to see if I can factor out GCF, and in this case I can't, and so I just have to go ahead and straight multiply the A and the C together, and when I do 12 times 6, we're going to get our 72. So we get 72, and we multiply first and the last together, and now 2 numbers that multiply to give me 72, but add to give me 17 is 9 and 8. So again, if I write up my 2 fractions, that's 12 over 9, which reduces, divide each one of these by 3, that reduces to 4 over 3. And then 12 over 8, divide each one of these by 4, and that reduces to 3 over 2. And so there's my 2 fractions in reduced form. And so therefore my fractions, or my factors, are 4x plus 3, and then 3x plus 2. And there's our factored form for number 9. Alright, number 10, again, we're asked to factor, but if I notice first off, they have a GCF in common, which in this case is actually 3x. And so we're going to take out the 3x. And when I take out the 3x, I'm left with x squared plus xy minus, well, if you take 3 out of 60, divide that out, you get 20y squared. Alright, and so that's just what we get when we first factor out 3x. Again, we got to take this middle part out, though, that's in parentheses, and we got to see if I can factor it. And so it looks like we can, and so I'm just going to drop down my 3x. And we don't have a number here in front of the x squared, and so I know that the first term here is just going to be x and x. And so now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me negative 20, but then add to give me positive 1. And so that actually turns out to be positive 5 and negative 4. Okay, they multiply to give you negative 20, but add to give you a 1. And then because we have that y on to the second term, on the last term, it just means you got to add a y on to this last term in your factors. And so that would be our final factored answer for number 10.